Bore da pawb, Madeline Havard, Welsh Government appointee.
Bore da pawb, Jack Hauser, Planning Officer for the National Fund.
Good morning all, Andrew Richards, Principal Planning Officer.
Bore da, Lottie Broom, Senior Planner for the National Park.
Bore da, Kate Attrell, Development Management Manager.
Bore da, good morning. I'm Sarah Morris. I'm Director of Places Engagement.
And me again, I'm John Hogg, I'm a Welsh Government appointee and Deputy Chair of this committee.
Charles Felgate, Solicitor with Geldards LLP.
Bore da, I'm Mike Kent. I'm the Monitoring Officer for the National Park.
Bore da, good morning. Sam Skin Blackhall, PCC appointee.
Good morning, Councillor Vanessa Thomas, PCC appointee.
Good morning, Angie Tinley, Pembrokeshire County Council appointee.
Bore da i chi gyd, Cynghorwyr Hugh Murphy ardal yn cynrychioli ardal Trydras Dinas dros cyngor Sir Benfro. Diolch.
Morning, I'm Caroline Llewellyn. I'm Democratic Services Manager at the meeting this morning.
Thank you all. Online, if you can start with you, Mike.
Bore da pawb, Cynghorydd Mike James,
Mike James,
Cyngor Sir Benfro,
appointed of Pembrokeshire County Council.
Appointed by Pembrokeshire County Council. Diolch yn fawr.
Helen, can you hear us?
Yeah, bore da, Helen Gwenllian, aelod wedi ffynodi gan Llywodraeth
Member appointed by Welsh Government.
Gwyn?
Gwyn Angell, appointed gan y Llywodraeth. I'm a government
Appointed by the government.
Oh, sorry, Bethan?
Yeah, bore da, Cynghorydd Bethan Price, o Tŷ Ddewi, PCC appointee.
Fiona, you're the last online, I believe.
Bore da pawb, Fiona Day, Welsh Government appointee.
So, diolch pawb. To receive the first item on the agenda, Caroline, can I ask to receive any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've apologies for absence from Councillor Claire George. Thank you.
Item 2, to receive any disclosures of interest by members or officers in respect of any items of business today. I'll take that as a no. So for the rest,
Personal and prejudicial interest in item number 6, EC 240029. I live in close proximity to that site. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Anybody else? The next item is to confirm as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of July, 2026. Beg your pardon, Madeline?
Happy to propose, Chair. Diolch.
We have Madeline as a proposer. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Vanessa, as a seconder. So, could I take a vote on those minutes for the meeting, the last meeting, please? Right, the record says 12. So, Caroline, could you record that as a true and accurate record for the minutes, please? Charles has reminded me that Councillor Clements has now arrived. Sorry, Di, I didn't see you on screen there. If you could do the introduction, please.
Apologies, I'm a bit busy at home at the moment. Di Clements, appointee from Pembrokeshire County Council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Di. Right, the next item on the agenda is to consider the solicitor's report. Charles, if I can hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I won't go through the report in detail because you'll have all either seen it before or read it. There's just one thing to add to the end of the report, and that is that the decisions of the authority can be subject to judicial review when they're positive decisions. I will give specific advice in relation to that if circumstances arise. But apart from that, that's it from me, Chair.
Thank you, Charles. Any questions to Charles at this stage? Thank you. So if we move on to the agenda proper, the two applications we see before us today are NP/250156/full. It's the installation of bases to the siting of a holiday accommodation at Lidstead Beach Village, Lidstead Hayden Tenby. Andrew, if I could. Oh, sorry, Bethan. I was trying to read things and didn't see you put your hand up. Beg your pardon.
That's okay, understanding. Yeah, no, I'm just abstaining from regarding to the minutes of the 15th of July as I was not there. So.
Thank you, Bethan. Apologies for not recognising seeing your hand up there.
No problem at all.
If I could hand over to Andrew for this first report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The application is presented to the Development Management Committee in accordance with the scheme delegation, as the proposed development did not accord with provisions of the adopted local development plan. In addition, both community councils objected to the application and Natural Resources Wales objected to landscape impacts, and I've got some corrections. So, since writing the report and having the application put on the agenda, it was advertised as a planning policy, departure from planning policy, because it was considered a change of pitch type within the site. However, officers recognised that the main application area was only a holding area for caravans and did not represent formal pitches within the site. As such, the application as presented to members is now not considered a departure from planning policy. The additional advertisements on this aspect are not considered to disadvantage the application process and would not negatively affect the overall planning process in this instance. In addition, within your report from members, there are corrections to the existing caravan numbers and the overall total numbers of units proposed. Therefore, the correct figures are 475 for existing pitches and 487 for overall total as proposed. And the corrections to these pitch numbers are on pages 12, 13, 17, 20, 23, 25, 29, 31, 36 and 44. During the time from when the application report was drafted, we do have some additional consultation received. So Natural Resources Wales now agrees with the authority's ecologists on the HRA and the appropriate assessment, and they're happy to support that, the conclusions as set out in that report. In addition to that, Dŵr Cymru Welsh Water sent an updated response because the initial response didn't take account of issues with wastewater treatment works within the locality. It's a one that's been reported to members previously in relation to the issues at Tenby wastewater treatment works. However, Manorbier and Saundersfoot pumping stations have been upgraded, and therefore that allows for a speedier occupation of any housing or accommodation development within those catchment areas. And therefore, because of that, we would need to add a grampian condition on to the application that's before members today, and the additional condition will read as per what's on the screen now. So the proposed development would drain into Tenby Wastewater Treatment Works via Manorbier pumping station, which is currently failing to comply with the quartile and its flow pass forward performance. However, a scheme is planned for completion by the 31st December 2026. Therefore, no buildings on the application site shall be brought into beneficial use until the scheme. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Unless the scheme at the wastewater treatment works into which the development shall drain has been completed and written confirmation of this has been issued by the local plan authority. We will amend this while we're discussing this application to replace the no buildings with no caravans reference. The main issues on the report are highlighted on your screen here now. And I will just take members through my slides in relation to the proposal. So this is the application site. You can see there's two areas of red, which are two application sites. So the smallest one, which is mid-screen, is for one caravan unit. And then the upper red line area is for an additional 11 units. The blue line area is the overall site area for Lydstep Haven, and the green area within the centre of the screen is an ecological enhancement area. So the upper site with the 11 units is named South of Pine Tree Site. So you can see the site area here. As you can see, there are caravans already within this area, which I will highlight with my marker here. As I described earlier, this was a holding area for caravans when they come on to the site and when they're due to go off to the site with caravans being replaced. The second site is the lower part where there's a single caravan proposed adjacent to an old toilet block structure here, which is there. So the caravan will be going here. Views into the site from the locality and the most sensitive receptor that we have, which is the coast path, are limited from the west. So you will see as part of this this slide, you can see how visible the existing caravans are within the site. But you can clearly see the north of Haven Crest, which is the one caravan, and then the south of Pine Trees, which are highlighted in red, which is the 11 units, how well those particular isolated sites within the overall site are screened by existing mature planting. The bottom one is just a further view in from further along the coast path to the west. Views from Cordy Island and the sea are shown on your screen at the moment. Obviously, these are distant views, but obviously, because it is a coastline development, we do need to consider these sensitive areas. So this is the proposed 11 units at the top of the site. So you will see 10 units orientated in different angles, leading along an existing access road. Within this area, then there is a public footpath that cuts through and through this area here onto the adjacent road. Unfortunately, as you will see with my photo slides in a short while, that footpath leads directly onto a road. There's no pavement or strip that goes across the road to another field. It exits onto the road, and the road then is your means of travel. There's additional landscaping and an entrance into this area proposed, and then a sole unit 11, which is isolated up into this corner here, which I will show you via my photos of an open area, which obviously is proposed to house unit 11. The cross section through this area is quite meandering at the moment. There's not a significant level difference at this location. You can clearly see where the existing road is, and obviously the footpath would lead up through this planting. And then you've got the existing access road within the site, and then the proposed road which would service the caravans, and the caravans are further beyond as well. This is the sole caravan unit 12, which is lower down in the site. You will see here a big band of trees to the right hand side of it, and they help screen this site. So as part of our assessment as officers, we have to look at the new SBG and whether or not certain areas have got capacity. This is a document extract from our SBG where we identify the site as falling in within LCA 4. LCA 4 is highlighted in a pink colour, which means it has limited capacity. As you will see from your report before members, we have gone into a lot of detail in that respect. So I just wanted to share the slide with members for their benefit. This is the internal site access road looking east. The site, the bigger application site is just to the left here. And that's looking along the same road in the opposite direction, looking west. So as you can see on the right-hand side here, this is part of the application site before members today. In this photo, you will also see a lot of mature trees. All of these trees are protected by a site TPM. Looking into this area, then you will see that there's an existing caravan that's being stored there for movement. And then behind this caravan is a more secure holding area for further caravans that are being moved on and off the site. This is another access road view. So this road would service this application site, but also there's 9 caravans further on, which is a dead end, and the road services access to them as well. The public footpath runs up this road and then across, and then cuts across this grassy area to the road. This is looking from within the site back at those trees, which provide a significant amount of screening to Lidstead Bay and the sensitive receptor, which is obviously the coast path beyond. Again, looking from within the site towards the northwest, you cannot see the additional 9 caravans. They're quite well screened from this area beyond this tree line. This is the secure holding area that I mentioned previously. So this will be opened up and caravans will be sited within this area. And this is looking back towards the access road, back from where we were taking those previous photos. This is another photo showing the level of tree screening to this site and the odd glimpse that you do get of the seascape beyond. And again, just from a slightly different angle towards Lidstead Point. This is the view from within this site leading up to the public footpath. And again, to the gate, and then straight onto the road. And this is, you can clearly see there's no public footpath that extends into the road or onto the verge. I mentioned Unit 11 earlier, which is a little bit isolated. This is the siting of the proposed siting for Unit 11 within this little nucleus of caravan units. With moving down to further down the site now into the single unit. The single unit will be provided within this area here. And again, this is the level of the tree screening, which with protected trees, which we utilise to provide screening and lessen any intervisibility between these sites and the coastline. As a form of consideration, officers did walk the coast path to Lidstead Point as well, and the next few slides are views from that route. So this is an overall photo of the site, and the next one, just to show you how extensive the site is. There are 466 caravans historically until recently when 9 were added. So we're now up to 475 caravans. and this is the view looking back from Lidstead Point. So you can see how intervisible this site is with the coastline. However, there are pockets within the site that do not have the intervisibility. And this is the lower site. So this is how you can see it is how well screened it is. So you can see the site area there. And again, for the upper site, the site area is hidden behind all of those trees. So to summarize, basically the planning policy has been considered in relation to Future Wales, Planning Policy Wales, and the local development plan. All being considered carefully, whilst the proposal has been considered against the sensitive location within the landscape character area 4, and it is confined to the 2 contained infill areas within the existing holiday park. The site does not extend to an established boundary into the surrounding countryside as highlighted by Natural Resources Wales, and subject to the plan conditions securing landscaping, tree protection, ecological mitigation, biodiversity enhancement and lighting controls. Officers consider that the proposal is not considered to result in an unacceptable harm to the landscape, seascape or special qualities of the national park in this area. The authorities, colleges, as mentioned previously, had undertaken an appropriate assessment, and NRW now accept that document and accept the conclusions within it. No objections have been raised by highway or public rights of way officer or drainage, and subject to appropriate conditions. At the start, I mentioned that the 2 community councils had objected on the proposal. However, officers are satisfied that the application has been appropriately assessed and all other material considerations have been taken into account. Natural Resources Wales concerns regarding landscape methods have been carefully considered. However, having regard to the submitted landscape and visual impact assessment, the site-specific characteristics and the proposed mitigation, officers conclude that the development is acceptable. Members should note that officers acknowledge the proposal is contrary to policy 41, and obviously this has changed now, so please ignore that aspect. And therefore, on balance, officers consider that the limited conflict with the Natural Resources Wales comments in relation to landscape impact. We consider that development is contained within the existing holiday park, represents only a 2.55% increase in unit numbers, and its landscape impacts will be further mitigated through retained trees, additional native planting, lighting controls, conditions, and requiring recessive external finishes. So overall, the proposal is considered to comply with the relevant provisions of Future Wales, Planning Policy Wales, and technical advice notes, and local development plan policies 1, 8, 10, 11, 14, 29, 32, 38, 40, 55, 59, and 60 of LDP2. And therefore, we are recommending 17 conditions, and the number 17 condition, as I alluded to earlier, will need a slight tweak to the wording to cover no caravans instead of no buildings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Not that I was counted, but I think there was 41 slides there. A lot of information for us to take in. The order in which I'd like to proceed now is that first we'll ask any questions from members of the authority. Then I'll invite the speaker, the agent in this case. Then we'll move into discussion.
Yes.
Yep. Then we move into discussion before finally going into a vote. So first of all, if we can have any questions to officers, and Andrew in particular. Madeline.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Andrew. I've got 2 questions. One very straightforward, which I'll start with, which is you talked about the holding area being part of the site where 11 of the caravans are going to go. Are they going to have another holding area or turning area or whatever? How is the site going to manage without that space?
Thank you. At the moment, there is no further proposed holding area. We do have the agent who will be speaking later, so maybe they can clarify further on that. But there's no holding area proposed as part of this application, so we're not envisioning one in the future.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, perhaps that would be helpful if it could be addressed in a presentation. And could you just go over the change in officers thinking about whether it was against policy in the LGP and now you don't feel it is? I wasn't quite following the points you made earlier on. Thank you very much. My fault, I think, not yours.
Not a problem. So basically, initial considerations were, okay, this site has a degree of indivisibility between the coastline and the site. I think that's all clear to see. Then we looked at under policy 41, and then we looked at whether or not it would be contrary because we thought it's a holding area, it's got existing caravans in it. You know, you make the assumption that they are unit pitches, but they're not. It's just a holding area. So we clarified that, and that's why we changed tack.
Sorry, if I share my screen, I've got policy 41, and it might be helpful to bring that up, and Andrew can talk you through policy 41. Sorry. So this is the policy that we had the discussion over. As you'll see, the first part of the policy, apologies if it's a little bit small, but it says new caravan, camping and chalet sites and changes of pitch types within existing sites will be considered away from the coast and Preseli's and in locations not intervisible with them. So we'd first assess the holding area as potentially being a pitch type, but having given it further consideration, because it wasn't a pitch for formal use, we don't consider that to be correct. And the second element of the policy talks about extensions to existing sites being considered where the extension is in a well-screened location, which officers assess this as being. So that's why we've had this discussion about whether it was a departure. Upon reflection, we don't consider that it is a departure on the basis that the area is not a formal pitch at present. And we have advertised it as a departure, but as Andrew set out, there's no harm in doing that, in that the only thing that's happened is that there's been additional publicity and greater opportunity for people to comment. So we don't think that the public has been disadvantaged in any way by that procedure having happened.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And no, I'd see it probably as an advantage that we've highlighted initially that there were more concerns than in fact when we've reviewed it there are. So thank you very much, Dr. Adam.
Thank you for the question, Madeline, and the clarification, Andrew and Sarah. If I move next to the screen, take Di and then Helen next.
Thank you, Chair. Mine was about the holding site as well, because if they've needed it before, they're going to need it again, one presumes, and that might cause an extension of the site in some way or form, but we'll wait for the agent. So I'll look forward to that. We talked about an area of limited capacity. Just wondering the extra number of pitches now or vans, how much will that affect the sort of overall capacity of the area? To, you know, is it getting near full capacity? I mean, that's just for interest. I know that's not relevant particularly, but I would just like to know that. And also the community council, they both community councils have objected but haven't really given any reasons why, which I find a bit weird. But I just wondered if you'd had any further confirmation or correspondence from them subsequently. Thank you, Chair.
I'll respond on this one. So I think The supplementary planning guidance is a material consideration. It is based at a point in time, and at that point in time, this landscape capacity character area was identified as having limited capacity. We have been undertaking survey work over the summer. I think we talked about it in the National Park Authority meeting, looking at all of the campsites across the national park. And I think as part of the local development plan, we will see whether or not that document requires updating, depending on how much the situation has moved across the national park, and updating that. But I think, as Andrew set out in his presentation, we think these minor extensions are well screened within the site, and therefore we don't consider that would undermine the overall capacity of the character area, or undermine the character area and its situation within the landscape. Thank you.
Just in respect of the community council question, Councillor Clements, obviously their views have been taken on board, but they were considered not to be substantiated views. And no, in respect of your second question on that one, no, we haven't had any further communication with them at this time.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Di. Helen, if we move next to you.
Hi. My question relates to the holding area as well. I think coming from within the Pembrokeshire Destination Management Plan, there seems to be like a resistance to static caravan expansion, and sort of looking at the offer and the mix, the market mix of accommodation in Pembrokeshire. But my concern is more to do with sprawl and the risk of sprawl. If there is no sort of holding area going forward, and just making sure that, you know, when the site is operational, when this development is operational, that risk of sprawl is managed, and that it's been sort of anticipated, mitigated, and contained.
I fully understand the question, fully appreciate the concerns. Obviously, we can only deal with the application that is before us. The application removes a holding area and doesn't propose another holding area in a different location. Obviously, if there is a proposal for a future holding area to be added to the site, then obviously that would have to come into us for consideration. You will note on the application that there is condition 16, which limits the total number of caravan units on the site. So that inevitably gives us a level of control of how many caravans can be put on this site at any one time. And we are limiting it to that exact number. So we're not envisaging any further caravans in a holding area within the site. Hopefully that answers your question.
Is that okay, Helen?
It answers it, but the application doesn't quite address the risk of sprawl from losing the holding site.
The previous consents that were granted here, they don't specifically state where each caravan has to be within the site. So caravans can be moved around, unfortunately, as part of previous consents. Now, obviously, the more recent consents do include drawings which we are conditioning, which means certain isolated sites within the overall site has to be as per the plan. However, the large amount of caravans could be moved within the blue line area outside of our planning controls, unfortunately, and we don't have any method of controlling that at present. As for the sprawl, obviously that hopefully answers your question, but all I would say is there's a lot of fixed bases here. To move a base to put it in a different location would have probably happened historically. the cost implications of that moving forward to move, it all adds to the overall outgoings on this development site. So from a financial point of view, it probably doesn't make any further sense to move caravans around the site. Hopefully that does clarify.
Is that okay, Helen?
Yeah, diolch, thank you. I think it's the main concern that's been raised by the Statutory Consultee Natural Resources Wales in terms of landscape impacts, and it's probably our main concern as well, is the landscape impact. So I just want to make sure that I'm taking that off as a member.
Thank you. I'm looking to my left. I can't see any hands. Oh, Michael.
Quick question, Mr. Chairman. I'm always intrigued when I see the definition of a caravan. I mean, if this is a caravan, I wouldn't like to tow it very far. When was the definition of caravans changed in planning law?
Back in the 1960s, unfortunately.
Might it be, Chair, something we perhaps might take up with the authorities higher than us, that perhaps it's time to redefine what a caravan is? I mean, these are chalets, they're not caravans. And it really does, if it's 1960s, it's perhaps something which does need redefining. I'm not sure, perhaps we could take this up with the even higher authorities than the National Park Authority.
If I can just come in.
Could I just suggest in relation to that we have to apply the law as it is today, unfortunately. So the comment that the chalets not caravans, in law they are caravans and we need to treat them as such.
It's the definition.
Yeah, they do fall within that definition.
Kate.
Sorry, I just wanted to say the definition was established in 1960, but it was updated in 1968 to include twin unit caravans, and then again in 2006 to include specific size limits. So relatively recently, within this century, it has been updated. But I completely take your point.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Charles, for reminding us of the law applies at that moment in time. Okay, I can't see any of the questions to my right or my left or on screen. So can I ask the speaker, Helen Ashby Ridgway, the agent for the application, to come forward, if I may? And Helen, you have 5 minutes. You're on the clock, as they say, and thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair, members, Bore da. I am Helen Ashby Ridgway, Planning Director at Lichfields. I speak on behalf of the applicant. I am joined by Elaine Canadine from Haven. Haven has been committed to Pembrokeshire for decades. With continual investment at Lidstead Beach Village and Kiln Park, the application before you today continues that programme of investment and seeks to further support the vital visitor economy here. The development proposal is modest, but has had the same careful attention as been given to applications at Haven's larger schemes elsewhere in the UK. The application's location within the national park means that the first and foremost priority is to protect and enhance its special qualities, and this has been done. We thank officers for their careful consideration of the application, paying attention to the details of the scheme, mitigation and enhancement measures, and we welcome their recommendation for approval. Policy 41 of the LDP is the key policy of consideration for caravan development. It supports extensions within well-screened locations subject to additional criteria in the policy. Criteria A to C are focused on whether the proposal would give rise to unacceptable adverse impacts on the landscape. Criterion D is not relevant, and criterion E requires landscape enhancement. In relation to criteria A to C, you can see that the development of the two parcels will not have any unacceptable adverse effects on the landscape. The majority of the development will not be visible from sensitive receptors. There will only be extremely limited glimpse views through substantial existing tree belts when viewed from the coast path to the north. These will be mitigated by further tree planting and the use of muted colour caravans, instead of the white and cream colours already used elsewhere at the park. When standing on the coast path, your eye is drawn to the extensive existing park, and the introduction of the 12 pitches will not be perceptible from that distance. There will be a change to the immediate landscape or the visual amenity of the public right-of-way that traverses the northern parcel south of Pine Tree. However, you will have seen from the photographs that this is not an open countryside location. That public right-of-way is a short stretch connecting the busy road along the park's northern boundary with the main body of the park. As soon as you enter from the road, the character of the landscape changes completely. You're aware you're in a holiday park. This stretch of the PROW is a mixture of tarmacked road and mown grass. The guest caravans are evident. If you're walking towards the road, you'll have already experienced the holiday park. Once it reaches the road, the PROW does not connect into the wider countryside, and there are no footpaths along the road. While you would experience a change, this is not as pronounced as NRW suggests, and your PROW officer has not objected, and your planning officers consider the change acceptable. There is currently no legibility of the route within the park. This will be improved through the proposed development. We have considered NRW's other comments regarding the impacts of the developments upon the landscape. We also know from the report that your officers have reviewed each and every point in fine detail, visiting the site and the surrounding area on multiple occasions to fully test the comments made. They are satisfied that the proposed development would be acceptable and would comply with the policies of the LDP. In addition to the mitigation and enhancement already mentioned, the development will deliver enhanced landscaping along the roadside boundary, and it will deliver a net benefit for biodiversity, including wildflower meadow. Commitments are made in perpetuity and enhancements will be secured by condition. Haven employs 123 people at Lidstep Beach Village. The additional 12 caravans will not only advance the quality of the offer at Lidstep, but will also reinforce the role of Lidstep in serving the evolving needs of visitors, reinforcing the existing jobs at the park and also facilitate increased spending in the villages and towns of the county. Extra spending means improved resilience of the hospitality sector, providing a positive ripple effect for socioeconomic resilience in Pembrokeshire. With a development proposal that meets your plan policies and one that will support the park in delivering for the visitor economy, we kindly ask that you agree with your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission. Thank you. Diolch.
Thank you, Helen. A very comprehensive summary of your applicant's position. The next part of the process is to move into discussion. So, members, if you'd like to, on the basis of what
questions for Helen first.
Oh, beg your pardon. I'm reminded. Do we have any questions for Helen first of all? Di.
Thank you. I'm going to tease out from you, hopefully, about the holding site, because obviously you've needed that, or the companies needed that holding site previously. And so, although I know we have to do what's in front of us, but I think it is important that we understand where that work of moving vans in and out is going to happen. If it's it's needed previously, surely it's going to be needed again, or perhaps you can help me understand the difference now. Thank you.
Thank you, Di. Helen?
Thank you, Councillor Clements. My understanding is that, I suppose just on a bigger picture, the stored caravans are there because there's quite a lot of movement across the park of caravans as people choose and they buy different caravans and move things in and out. So what normally happens with those caravans across the Haven estate is they stay there until they get moved off site. Normally they get done in bulk and they wait until they've got a certain number of caravans and they get moved off. In reality, what also happens is if there's a bit of a delay in moving them off for, I don't know, they're not needed at another park, or maybe there's nobody wants to buy them immediately, that's why they end up getting stored. But there's this constant churn at the park. A little bit like buying a bigger house. If you've got space there, you're going to buy enough stuff to fill the bigger house, even if you've moved from a smaller house. And I suspect some of what's gone on at Lidstep in the past is that they've had the space to store caravans there. And so perhaps they've just been left there for a little bit longer than that they need to. And the caravans typically get churned at the end of the season. what my understanding is from Haven is that they are now, that space is not going to be available for them. And so the idea is there'll just be better management about moving them off site more quickly. I think, hearing the concerns from members and the appointed members today, if it is felt that it's needed, perhaps the officers might consider you might consider an operational management plan condition on the permission that will require us to submit some details for agreement with officers that explains how the caravans are going to be churned and moved off the site, perhaps more readily than they have been in the past, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Helen. Di, is that okay? You're on mute, Di.
Apologies, I thought I'd unmuted. That's a really helpful suggestion. Thank you, and I'm glad you've recognised perhaps our concerns, because we're mindful that that another 10 might be stored somewhere for all of the winter or parts of the year, and it therefore increases the number of caravans on site, whether they're used or not. So I think that would be really helpful. I'd take a bit of advice from officers if we could include that, please, but that may be later for the discussion. I don't know. I'll take advice. Thank you.
Yeah, we'd be happy to have an additional condition requesting an operational management plan just for how caravans would be moved to and from site. I think, as Andrew mentioned, we do also have condition 16 on the report, which is an overall limit of numbers of caravans, which would preclude would preclude additional caravans beyond that limit being added to site or stored on site. But yeah, I think an operational management plan would certainly be helpful in clarifying how that's going to be managed.
Do we have any more questions to the agent? I'll look around. More.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a bit worried. One of the slides showed a hedge leading onto a main road. And I was wondering, are there any speed limits on that road because it's going through the park? Because I think that's an accident waiting to happen, a child walking onto the road through a hedge, etc. I'm being a bit dramatic, but that's what was worrying me. So, do you have a speed limit for that road?
The main road, as I understand it, is a 60-mile-per-hour road, but we're not proposing any new hedge access through the hedge. That's already there. That's the public right of way. So we're not proposing to change that, and we wouldn't propose to close it either, because that's not something we would suggest the National Park would want to see.
Yes, I think we're just checking the speed limit of the road. Oh, sorry, Maureen, could you? We're probably giving feedback to people online if we both have our microphones on. We're just checking. I think it's 40. Is it?
I believe it's 40, Chair.
We believe it's 40. Obviously, I think I'm always conscious that highways officers always say, that doesn't mean you drive at 40. That it means that you can drive up to 40 miles an hour with road conditions allowing. It's an existing right of way. We haven't had objections from the right of way officer, and this proposal is not impacting on that right of way. So it's not something that I think we should be giving significant weight to in determining the application. It's something we can take away and separately have a conversation with the rights of way officer about whether there's any need for additional signage. Perhaps to have a conversation with Haven about just warning residents who are staying about, keeping an eye on any proximity to that access.
Thank you, Sarah. Helen, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. I guess just to understand a bit more about operationally what's happening on this site in Haven, how many caravans do you currently have in the holding area?
I'm afraid I couldn't tell you offhand. I think generally there's normally about 8 or 10, something like that, but they're in quite a small area because they don't need the normal separation distance that you need for a habitable caravan. But it does change, you know. But I haven't been on site recently. Certainly in the lead up to this committee in the last sort of 6 weeks, so I couldn't tell you how many there are.
Chair, if it helps, I've just looked on the aerial, and there was 12 when an aerial photo was flown. But when we were on site the other day, there was definitely less than 12, probably about 5 or 6. And the time before that, I visited the site, I think it was quite low again. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Helen. I'm looking around the room for.
Oh, can I? Sorry, I've got a follow-up question, if that's okay. How long have the caravans been there?
Do you mean as a storage area generally, or do you mean each individual caravan?
Yeah, well, yeah. How long? So if your guess was 8 to 10, that's more than half of what the proposed 16 site is. And how long have they been there? Because visual impact is sort of a really high risk for us.
I think the question is how long has the storage area been used as a storage area? I think it's that specific location.
I don't know. I wonder whether officers can have a look on Google Earth to see if it shows. I'm sorry, Councillor, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, while we're searching out that bit of information, Sam, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. One already, Councillor Bowen has already asked regarding the road, and I know we were saying we're not actually bringing that into conversation, but I would like to say, because of the positioning of that pathway, it is quite a precarious bendy road that it leads out onto. I do think that that does need to be looked at by officers for safety for pedestrians as well. Secondly, just looking at the public responses again, where this is going to be situated, it is making reference to the seclusion of the area and is very spacious and used as a child's play area as well. So obviously, if that is the case, it is going to be removing that area from use by people who are visiting and staying on the site there. So would there be anything being proposed in a different area or close to that area if that space is lost because of this?
The area that's being described isn't a formal play area for the park. There are other formal play areas across the park, both sort of outdoor areas and indoor areas for children. As I understand it, it's an informal area that's just immediately outside the caravans in that area of south of Pine Tree. No other formal areas being proposed in that area or elsewhere on the park, but it's considered that there are lots of other areas across the park that you know, children can use to kick a ball about. And
okay.
If I can make a suggestion, it's that we've discussed an additional condition in relation to an operational management plan, and that as part of that, we would include a request for signage warning about the right-of-way access for those staying on site, if the agent would accept that.
Yes, I think that would be acceptable. Thank you.
Right, thank you for that, Helen. Thank you, officers, for the answers to the questions. I'm looking around the room. Do I have any more questions of the agent? I'm looking to my right, I'm looking to my left, I'm looking online. If there are no further questions, I propose that we move into a discussion before finally going into a vote. So if we move into discussion item now, any Andrew wants to come back, sorry.
Just to come back to you on the timing of this, if I can share my screen, I can just show members what I'm looking at. So This is aerial photography in 1999 to 2000, and you can clearly see that this area was being used as a holding area as far back as then. Okay.
Thank you, Andrew. So if I could now move into discussion, I think we've had a very comprehensive set of questions and answers today. So if we move into discussion, Helen, do you want to come in there? I think it's your hands raised. Was that a legacy hand?
Yeah, I'll come in anyway. Thank you. I think with this application, on the face of it is an application for 16 static caravans on this site. But I feel that the holding area aspect has been overlooked because there's the risk of it being 16 static caravans on site with the risk of sprawl of having between 5 and 10 additional static caravans on site, which is not an insignificant number when we look at the number of spaces that we're looking at within this application. So I take on board that we could have an operational management review, but I think within that we need to be incredibly clear that it is 16 caravans in sort of cumulative max, not 16 sited caravans and then a holding area of up to 5 to 10 within that. So that's my thoughts, I guess, on this application.
Thank you, Helen. I think Andrew would like to come back on that.
Yeah, thank you for those comments, Helen. I just wanted to clarify, obviously, as part of the application, the holding area is being removed and not a new one being proposed. Obviously, we've discussed adding a management movement plan to the application, which will give us greater control. Caravans can move on and off the site on a day basis. But obviously this application that is before members also gives members control on these areas. So what we're looking at is to control these areas better. So, and the control of overall numbers. So if members are minded to go with the recommendation and grant consent, we do have that control. In addition to the numbers you mentioned, 16, the application before members at the moment is for a total number of 12 caravans only. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I next propose we move into discussion, if that's okay. Oh, Madeline, you wanted a discussion. So online, first of all, any discussion items you'd like to bring to the table, or to my left or to the right in the room? Di, you want to come in at that point?
Well, not for discussion. I was going to propose something, but are you ready for that?
Are we ready for?
Thank you, Chair. As you say, I know we've talked, as you say, about the sensitivity of the area, but I just wanted maybe just another comment on looking at our own SPG. This confirms that this landscape character area, Manorbier Freshwater East, has a high to medium sensitivity to static caravan development, and with regard to capacity, advises that there is no capacity for further development where there are existing clusters, as they already adversely affect the landscape character, and further intensification would lead to cumulative impact. It goes on to further state that there does not appear to be an opportunity for further expansion of static caravan sites. So my question is, if we approve this planning application today, could this cause issues further down the line if other sites in this area were to apply to increase their numbers if we've already departed from our own guidance? That's one question. I've got another question which is on trees. So there are a considerable number of trees on this site which are protected by the TPOs. So are all the trees on this site now protected under TPOs? It wasn't clear to me when I was looking at the report. So I just wanted some information on that. And if I've understood this correctly, the trees proposed for this new area are to be protected under the conditions of the planning permission. And then page 27 of the report refers to the majority of boundary trees to be retained. But in reading the report, it only says that one was to be removed. So I just wanted some clarification on that, please. Thank you.
Andrew, could you come back on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the capacity aspect in relation to the LCA 4, it is guidance. It is guidance for officers. We have looked at it in detail. There's, as I've mentioned in my presentation and mentioned within the report, there's been a lot of information, more detailed information carried out, submitted as part of the submission that's before members. On balance, officers considered that there is an opportunity here to infill these isolated sites with a few more caravans, and that in general would have to be considered on a site-by-site basis. The significant level of information that we've had and the level of screening that the site has, and the betterment gives us better control of these areas. Obviously, if it's an existing holding area, that on balance for us was enough for officers to recommend approval in this instance. In respect of the trees, if you don't mind, if I can share my screen again, I can just show members the site and the level of TPO protection that is within this site. So I'll try and show as much of the site as possible. So as you can clearly see, the site is covered quite extensively with TPO protection. So those shaded areas within the site show the areas that have been TPO'd. So that is the highest level of tree protection that we have. There is boundary treatment and certain trees within the site that is not protected. However, they are substantial trees that do offer a significant amount of screening. And obviously, at some point in the future, the actual tree officer may decide to look for further protection for the site, but I can't make that call at this moment in time. But for us, in relation to the sheer amount of screening for the site, we're quite content with our recommendation to members. The protection that you mentioned in relation to the loss of one tree, not every tree on this site does have a degree of protection, because there are some old trees here which are failing. I think it's quite clear that the level of tree protection within the site is so extensive, and the management that we've been working with this site over the last decade or two has been very extensive as well. Our tree officer goes down to this site on a regular basis and works with their arborists to come up with the best solution for most of the trees on the site. There is some invasive species within the site that we're looking to manage as well. And obviously you've got an extensive landscape scheme in front of you as part of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is when it says the majority of the boundary trees, it is still only one tree to be removed then. Yeah. Thank you. And obviously we're okay that we are departing from guidance. If any other planning applications should come in, it's on a case by case. Thank you.
Yeah, we would consider every application on its merits. We can, obviously there's been an extensive amount of information submitted in support of this application, and obviously your officers have gone through that bit by bit and considered it, and also been out to site several times to consider the landscape impact because of the comments made by Natural Resources Wales. And we feel we're now in a position to comfortably recommend that recommendation to you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Andrew. I think it's right and proper that we have confidence in moving forward and how we move forward. I think there's been a full and frank discussion this morning on all aspects of this report. It is comprehensive. Andrew and the team have done a great job in bringing all factors to the table for discussion. Can I move, if it's okay, to a vote? Can I have a proposer, please? Guy, I think you're proposing for approval.
Yeah, I am. I am going to. I think I'm grateful to the agent for recognising our concerns about the holding site, and I think that gives me some satisfaction that that gives us more control as an organisation, as an authority. So I think I'm content with that, because that was my stumbling block a bit. I mean, I've walked that bit of path numerous times, and actually when the tide is out, you don't look to your left if you're coming from Manorbier, or right if you're coming from the Tenby direction. You look out to sea. You don't see what's behind you. And it's certainly within the skyline. So I'm quite happy with that. I mean, you have that bit of tarmac going down, but you are shaded by trees. So I think it still feels like you're on the coast path. So I don't have an issue with that. So I'm very happy to and content to propose the recommendation by officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Di. Mike, you wanted to come in? Beg your pardon.
Could I just confirm that's subject to Andrew's further condition and the operational management condition, as well as the recommended conditions? Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Mike, you wanted to come in at that point?
Yeah, dim ond I eilio'r
Only to
application,
second
if
the
more
application,
credit,
if you're so kind to do so. And we've had
mawr o'r
information,
wrth
a lot of information from everyone,
agent,
from the
swyddogion,
agent,
so
the officers.
hoffwn i eilio.
So I
Diolch yn
would
fawr
like
iawn.
to second the proposal. Thank you.
Diolch, Mike. So we have a proposer, we have a seconder to approve this application, subject to the changes as Charles outlined and Andrew has also outlined. Can I move to the vote, please? All those in favour? Oh, Madeline, you wanted to come in before?
It's just an additional point. I'm obviously pleased that we've got control about numbers, and the additional condition about the operational management, I think will give us a lot more control. I'm particularly pleased to see the recessive colours suggested for both of these two sites. We've seen the photographs. The lighter ones are very impactful, and it was just really to make a point that perhaps we could, in discussion, and it's outside this application, I'm very aware, with the holiday park itself, talk about when they are changing and altering vans or lodges on site, that more recessive colours be the ultimate aim, because I think that would help the visuals for the whole site overall. So I think it's certainly outside this one, because the application says that, but it might be something we could aim for in the future. There obviously is turnover and churn, we've heard, and I think that would benefit both the national park and indeed the resort itself. So,
so before I move to the vote, Andrew, you wanted to come on last point.
Just in response to that, Chair, thank you. We have had those conversations with the agent. Obviously, we don't have the control over the rest of the park, unfortunately, but we hope that this application is the catalyst for something of more of a movement towards that. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, that in the report it was written before we had the NRW support for the HRA. So the recommendation as of today is to approve today, and if members are happy to delegate the details of the conditions in relation to the caravan members, the amended Grampian condition in relation to the timing of occupation of caravans, and the submission of an operational management plan to include information on the movement on and off of caravans and signage. Yeah, and the amendment to the Grampian condition to refer to caravans rather than buildings. Thank you.
Did you want to come in there? Okay. Okay, I always think that clarity is next to godliness, and I think we're clear. And Andrew, thank you and Sarah for clarifying those points for the conditions. They were very, very helpful. So hopefully we've had the discussion now. It's been pretty comprehensive. The report was comprehensive. The discussion has been comprehensive. Lots of questions. If I can move to the vote, can I ask those in favour of approval to raise their hands? Abstentions or? One, two, oh, one.
Were you abstaining?
When can you okay. Okay. One abstention, any refusals, just for completeness? No. Thank you very much, members. That was a very comprehensive and detailed debate. I'd like now to move on to the next application, if I may. That is the application NP stroke 26 stroke 253 stroke Res. This is in relation to the land adjacent to Brodowell Solva, Afford West. I think Lottie, you'll be taking us through that report.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
We're just changing over.
So this application is seeking approval of all reserved matters comprising appearance, landscaping, layout, scale and access related to application NP 230545. The outline application formed part of a hybrid application that came to Planning Committee in April 2025. So this is being presented to DM Committee as it's a major application of over 10 dwellings. So this application is for 11 social rented dwellings. The principle of these dwellings has been accepted and established, and this is not a matter for determination at this time. It considers the approval of the details reserved by the outline, as previously noted, appearance, landscaping, layout, scale and access. So the hybrid permission that I just mentioned is accompanied by a section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act legal obligation, which secures local lettings policy, recreational open space, secondary school contributions and library services. So the application has been assessed around the National Planning Policy Sustainable Placemaking outcomes listed here. By way of an update, we had re-notifications, reconsultations were made in August following the receipt of revised layout plan showing an additional access. We hadn't received any objections up to this point, and we still have received no objections, nor any objections from third parties. So the application site is an affordable housing exception site because it is outside the identified centre boundary of Solva. It's immediately south of the A487. The area that we're referring to today is phase 2. And if you can just see my cursor, it's the upper left quarter of this larger square, basically. So there's the Brodowell adjacent on the western side here, A487 to the north. And it's of approximately 4 acres. So historically, this site was laid out as football pitches and used by Solva Football Club and also I think community events and ad hoc seasonal parking. This image shows those football pitches. So just for clarity and to remind members, the outline hybrid permission included the retention, or at least the inclusion of a football pitch as part of the phase 1 scheme, and that's accepted as part of the full planning permission. So you can see that football pitch there, the bottom left. The phase 2 area that we're discussing today is that upper left quarter, and the faded area is the housing development, the full consent that's already been granted. So this is the view looking southeast from the A487. Closer view from the corner of the pavement and from the adjacent road, Rodal. And then view looking from the south. So phase 2 is the beige background area. The proposed house types, this is an illustrative plan that was submitted at the outline, but the proposed number and size of dwellings is consistent still with this outline illustrative plan. So the proposed houses are 5 3-bed houses, 4 2-bed houses, and 2 1-bed houses. And hopefully you can make out just faintly those colours. Oh, I ought to add as well, apologies. So in terms of house types and housing mix, the housing strategy and affordable housing manager at Pembrokeshire County Council supports this proposed mix. And similarly, our strategic policy team support this proposed mix, and we overall consider it to accord with policy 52 of the local development plan housing mix. So Planning Policy Wales states that good design is fundamental to creating sustainable places where people want to live, work and socialise. Design is not just about the architecture of a building, but the relationship between all elements of the natural and built environment and between people and places. So because this site is entirely affordable housing, it has to satisfy the Welsh Government development quality requirements, which it does, and this includes compliance with the Secured by Design Gold Safety Standard to support community safety. Also standards in terms of being low carbon design and energy efficiency performance. So this helps to reduce household bills and vulnerability to price volatility. And also good design can include, in this case, it's the movement through the site and the proposed green spaces, including the football pitch and aspects, and positively supports good design. So this street scene is the view as you would see it directly looking towards phase 2 from the A487. So the proposal is consistent with the illustrative outline and the full consent granted, and reflects the appearance and character of those already approved, those dwellings already approved, and accords with the condition previously imposed regarding scaled parameters. The development is of a density, layout and scale which is directly comparable with that previously described. So in terms of the housing types, this is the 1-bed house, of which 2 are proposed. All houses share a similar characteristic in having a slightly overhanging roof to the front with a sheltered area. 2-bed house, of which there are 4. And I ought to add as well that the front elevations will be facing the A487. And the 3-bed house, of which there are 5. Okay, the title of this slide says active travel routes. So on the left is existing. So there's just an informal cut through the hedgerow. The proposal obviously doesn't use exactly the same position, but allows pedestrian access through from Brodal still, and also introduces a new pedestrian access from the A487 all the way through the development to the football pitch. So the proposal increases the routes through and into the site. Every house will have safe and secure bike storage to help reduce car dependency and support healthier lifestyles. And the submission of details for electric vehicle charging points is required by condition via the hybrid consent. So based on previous highways advice, the secondary emergency access has been included as part of this proposal. This occurred during the course of this application, hence the need for the reconsultations. So this shows that emergency access, which will be down Brodal and in at the bottom southwestern corner by the football pitch and through to the estate. So recommended planning conditions by highways will satisfy the need for detailed designs to be submitted regarding this emergency access and just more generally access routes. This alongside the Highways Authority Section 278 agreement to undertake the works and a Section 38 agreement for the adoption of the road. So this slide shows the existing site boundaries and features for both phases 1 and 2, so the site overall. And it shows how in some places these hedgerows are quite sparse, and so the opportunities for enhancement which the proposal takes advantage of. The proposed landscaping shows how the landscaping is peppered across the site for ecological connectivity. I realise you can't see it very clearly, but the key sort of demonstrates the variety of soft landscaping types proposed. An updated landscape management plan has been submitted during the course of this application and addresses both planning ecologists and NRW's concerns regarding the planting replacement frequency. So in terms of green infrastructure, as a background note, conditions attached to the hybrid consent required the submission of site-wide specific planting and landscape details, and these have been partially discharged. So the proposal is consistent with those details approved. So it consists of approximately 13 specimen of fruit trees, and this aspect responds to previous advice to implement larger trees with greater longevity potential and contribution to amenity. Also, the supplementary planting in the northern boundary hedgerow adjacent to the main road, which is probably one of the most sparse hedgerows. New hedgerow planting between all rear gardens and the rear boundary of the northern row of housing. New hedge bank along the rear boundary of the southern row of housing. Ornamental hedgerows in the front curtilage areas of all dwellings, as well as grass and meadow areas in the larger spaces and rain gardens between pavements and vehicular areas. Biodiversity enhancements include integrated swift boxes on the eastern gable ends of housing development, bat boxes on the type F, which are the larger dwellings, and hedgehog gaps in the fenced boundaries of the southern row of dwellings. And these proposals accord with recommendations made during the hybrid application. So as way of background, at the time of the hybrid application, Welsh Water concluded that foul flows arising from both phase 1 and phase 2 could be accommodated within the immediate public sewerage system and the wastewater treatment works. And on this basis, that a Grampian condition wouldn't be necessary. However, since that consultation response and since that application was determined, and at the point of this consultation, Welsh Water have confirmed that the wastewater treatment works is failing to comply with its flow pass forward permit. Welsh Water are required to deliver a scheme at the wastewater treatment works to ensure compliance with the flow pass forward performance by 31st of December this year. Imposing a Grampian condition controlling occupancy of the dwellings would materially derogate from the outline permission. A condition imposed by the hybrid consent still requires the submission of a phasing plan detailing the order and timing of the development to be implemented. So this phasing plan can include detail and timing of the housing itself and internal roads, the football pitch and associated parking bays. The outstanding phasing plan can effectively control the delivery of the dwellings to be in line with the completed upgrade works of the wastewater treatment works. So the provision of this phasing plan allows the local planning authority to be clear on the timing of the delivery of the dwellings and how this accords with upgrades to the wastewater treatment works. So officers are overall content that the phasing condition can satisfy the material consideration in relation to water quality and the concern raised by NRW on the water quality of protected sites. I also ought to add, so this site, it's not within the nitrate nutrient zone, and based on NRW's guidance, that's why this application has been screened out. We haven't carried out a habitats regulation assessment. So we are following NRW guidance. So in conclusion, it's considered that the layout, scale and design of dwellings and the broader site reflects the appearance and character of the phase 1 scheme consent and is considered acceptable. The landscaping is similarly consistent by extending or creating new similar landscape features and is considered acceptable. And the proposal delivers on the national sustainable placemaking outcomes established in Planning Policy Wales and reinforced in Future Wales. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Lottie. A lot to consider there, from water quality down to Welsh Water's capacity in the sewage network to ecology and biodiversity. We do have the agent for the applicant here today, but before we move to that, are there any questions from members? Madeline.
Thank you, Lottie. That was a really clear presentation. And I'm obviously aware that we've already given approval for the site, so that this isn't an issue. I am aware that this is the second of the two applications where NRW have raised concerns, and I think I'd be grateful for just further assurance. You covered the point that the site is not within the nitrate nutrient zone, and so it's screened out following NRW guidance. Can you just clarify again what their concerns are and why we feel that we're happy with this, and if they're still expressing concern? I realise I mentioned the other application that was on a purely different, it was for landscape, and so purely different concern, but they are our advisor on this, so it'd be really helpful to know. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Madeline. We've got Islin Wilson with us today, who's the ecologist, so I think we might defer to Islin to clarify this point, if that's all right.
Yeah, Bore da, Islin. So I do the water quality issues for both Pembrokeshire County Council and Pembrokeshire National Park. So with this application, the original permission was given upon Dŵr Cymru's consent, saying they had capacity. Subsequent to that original permission, a new condition assessment came out for the protected site of Pembrokeshire, which means that new applications are screened for this flow pass forward issue, which is essentially overloading of sewers in conditions where there's excessive rainfall. This has been flagged on this subsequent application. However, the permission's been given already, so we can't impose the Grampian condition now. But essentially, it's an operational issue where they've said that during excessive storm overflow, they are experiencing sewage outfall, and so they've highlighted this for us as their environmental team, but not their development planning team. So any subsequent applications coming forward, especially if they drain into the Cleddau, which is the nutrient neutrality zone, which is no development can go forward due to pollution issues, then we put conditions on and the development is paused. But here it does not lead into the nutrient neutrality zone, but they flagged it as a general water quality environmental concern. For this application, there is already a condition requiring a phasing plan, which means that we would have to agree that pre-commencement condition, which would outline when the houses are built and subsequently occupied. So this would be after Dŵr Cymru has completed their upgrades. So essentially they're advising that they will be doing upgrades and they will be completed by December 2026. After that, the houses would then be able to be occupied with no impact on the protected site. I don't know if that's probably a lot of overload of information, so I'm happy to take any other questions.
That's really helpful, and Lottie had explained it, but that added extra quality, clarity there. So thank you very much, Chair. I have got another point as well.
Go ahead, Madeline.
We don't seem to have a condition in this application, and I know it's reserved, so I can't remember whether it was in the outline, concerning lighting. And obviously that's an issue with any of these new developments. So I just wondered, could you remind us if that was with the first one or whether we do need a condition on lighting? Thank you. External lighting. Thank you.
Yes, I can confirm it was a condition as part of the hybrid application, and in fact the lighting has already been discharged as a condition.
Perfect.
Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Lottie. I'm looking on the screen. Any questions to the presenter, to Lottie today? I can't see any. I look to my left within the room. I can't see any there. Look to the right. Michael, you.
Brief question. Solva Community Council, no observations?
No further comments from Solva Community Council.
Thanks for that, Lottie. Any other questions from the room? I'm getting nods, so we'll move on to the. We're very fortunate today to have the agent for the application, Elena Gedashidze. Forgive me if I've mispronounced your name, but you're online. If you'd like to sort of give us 5 minutes on behalf of the application.
Bore-da, chair members, no worries about my name. It's a really tough one to pronounce, so I never expect anybody to know that one. Yeah, I'll be speaking today as the agent on the application. Also, apologies for my camera issue, but I'll press on as to not waste time. So this is a focus reserve matters application before you today for phase 2 of a scheme, which this committee has already resolved to support at the hybrid full and outline stage. The principle of providing the 11 affordable homes therefore remains established, and the existing legal agreement secures the 28 affordable homes across both phases in perpetuity. The question before members today is therefore a very precise one, whether the detailed appearance, landscaping, layout, scale and access are acceptable. Following the comprehensive assessment that you've seen and the thorough report, your officers have concluded that they are happy with these details and recommend approval. The scheme remains faithful to the approved parameters, delivering the homes at a scale and density comparable with phase 1 and creating a coherent development with a consistent built character. The detailed design has been carefully developed in response to Solva's established wider character, drawing on the modest rendered dwellings, slate roofs, strong gable forms and dormers found locally. I just want to draw your attention as well to the fact that particular care has been taken with a landscape response given the national park setting. This includes the appointment of not only one but 2 specialist landscape consultants, namely John Campion Associates and Dan Patterson Landscape Associates. This has ensured a robust response to green infrastructure and landscaping as far as possible by the applicant. The existing native boundary hedgerows are retained to a large extent, and the proposed planting that has been gone through in detail in the report, this has been carefully chosen and it's been consulted on extensively with the authority. This ensures longevity of the planting in terms of the local weather patterns and also given the nature of the management of the site as an RSL scheme. To ensure longevity, the submitted landscape management plan demonstrates the framework for managing this. No access concerns remain. We did have further consultation with Highways, and in response to that, a secondary emergency access has also now been incorporated and tested through sweat path analysis for a fire vehicle. So we've approved upon accessibility to the site in those circumstances. The sustainable drainage arrangements have also progressed through the separate statutory SAB process. This has now received approval also. No consultees or residents have objected to the development. These 11 homes, they will provide much needed social rented accommodation as part of the wider affordable housing scheme. The importance is heightened by the current housing delivery context across Pembrokeshire, where environmental constraints regarding nutrients, as discussed today, present a barrier to the progression of much needed homes, resulting in some uncertainty on future pipeline. Against that backdrop and the pressing need, the genuine and shorter term opportunity to deliver affordable housing here is a particularly significant one. The site is not within the distinct nitrate neutrality zone, and in terms of flow pass forward, the necessary Welsh water upgrades will occur this year. The proposed mix across the phases has been shaped by the direct identified local need, prioritising the homes most urgently required in the area, while still providing some larger homes to support a balanced community and ensure cohesion going forward. Approval will therefore translate an established outline plan and permission into something tangible to secure high quality and affordable homes for people who need them where the need is significant. The scheme has also been delivered from the outset in close collaboration with the Solva Community Land Trust, with direct community engagement helping to helping to shape the development throughout. This gives the scheme a genuinely local foundation. For those reasons, Chair and members, we kindly ask that you support the officer recommendation and approve the reserve matters application before you today to allow ATEB to enter into contract and deliver those homes for the local people who need them. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Very comprehensive teasing out of all the issues and also the conclusion as well. Members, do we have any questions for the agent this morning? On screen? I can't see anything, but not in head. So, by that sounds, it was very comprehensive. In the room to my left. Beg your pardon, Bethan. I missed your hand. Beg your pardon.
I would just like to move on to supporting this proposal, this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Bethan. Andrew, did you want to come in? Oh, I beg your pardon. Someone was signalling to me that someone was wanting to speak. In the room on to my right, any questions of the agent? On my left, questions of the agent? Right, I think both Lottie and Elena, you've been very comprehensive in teasing out the issues. Therefore, I'd like to move to a discussion. Any points in discussion, again, online or within the room? I think the silence speaks volumes and a testament to the quality of the reports presented by officers and all the forward upward together. Okay, then let's move then to a vote. May I have a proposer, please? Bethan, if a proposer in yourself, a seconder. Angie in the room has seconded that proposal, also as well as Di. In that case, I'd like to move to a vote. Please, all those in favour, please raise your hands. Well, full house. In fact, only I've played bingo. Thank you very much indeed. So what I'm hearing is that application has been approved comprehensively by the Planning Authority, subject to the conditions in the report. What I'd like to do now, it may be an old man's condition, but I'd like to propose a 5-minute break, comfort break, if that's possible. Everyone's got thumbs up. So what I propose is that we come back in 10 to 12. Is that okay? Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. Croeso nôl pawb. The Park Authority, as you know, has a number of regulatory tools in its kit bag. One is planning applications, determinations, which we discussed this morning. The other important one is enforcement action. And on the agenda today, we have 2 items regarding enforcement. If I can turn to those, the first is the EC 24/0029, land at Froghall Yard, Morton Lane, Saunders Foot. Vanessa, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say, I declared personal prejudicial interest, but I have been advised that because there's no decision, I can stay in the meeting today. So if that's okay, I can stay then. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'll now hand over to Sarah to take the items.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there is a change to the recommendation for the report in the report before members, which will become clear as I work through my presentation. The case reference in question is EC 24/0029 in relation to land at Froghall, Morton Lane, Saundersfoot, Pembrokeshire, SA 699JG. And the amended recommendation is to note the updated situation on site as of the 2nd of September 2026 and to continue to monitor the position. In the report before members, paragraph 13 notes that following the ongoing breach and the determination of 2 applications on site, and the fact that following the refusal of the 2 applications, the landowner had not chosen to appeal the second or first refusal, that in line with a legal agreement that the landowner had signed, they were required to clear the site within a timescale of 1 month from the date of the refusal or of the expiry of rights of appeal or legal challenge by the 28th of August 2026. And the report before members states that there would be a verbal update at the meeting as to whether or not that had taken place. I can confirm that since the report was published, the authority received a phone call from the owner on the 26th of August confirming that the site had been cleared of the static caravan and storage shed. A site visit was undertaken by officers from this authority on the 27th of August and confirmed that had taken place. And I have some photographs from the site on the 27th, which are on screen. So you can see that the fence remains and some of the chippings remain. And we have still a storage container and a mower on site, but that the static caravan, which was formerly to the north of the site, has now been removed, and as has the storage shed. So we are grateful that that has happened without the need to proceed to an injunction process, and therefore I'm not requesting permission for an injunction today from members, but purely that you note the situation. We have received a 3rd planning application on this site. We have had some correspondence from interested parties asking why we are required to determine a 3rd application. Under the Welsh legislation, there is no ability to decline to determine an application that has not been refused by appeal, and therefore we will consider the 3rd application on its merits, and that will be brought to this committee in due course. So happy to take any questions if members have any. Thank you.
Just to be clear, there's no vote today on this issue. It's to note, but we can give questions to Sarah. But we also have with us today 2 of our enforcement staff, Emily Holder and Di Griffiths. So I'll throw it open to questions online and also within the room. Di, you've got a question?
Yeah, I have. Thank you. I'm glad that the landowner has decided to do the right thing. So that's pleasing, isn't it? And it's a shame that we have to go down sort of ultimatum route before anything happens. But I've noticed on paragraph 162, obviously you've mentioned, Sarah, about the third planning application, which was received on the 7th of August. I just wondered if it's being validated, or is that being stretched out a little unnecessarily in your view? You might not be able to answer that, but that's nearly a month or 5 weeks away. I would have thought it would have been validated by now, or are there problems with it? Thank you.
Yes, I can confirm it has been validated, and the opportunity for anybody to make comment on that is available and is live at present. Thank you.
Is that okay, Di? Councillor Hugh Murphy, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's pronounced down now. Yes, the only question I have is, obviously this is predated my appointment onto the national park. What is the definition of this land currently? I mean, obviously I don't know the size of it. It's got woodland. Is it agricultural? Is it woodland? What is that? Because obviously there's no permission there for anything to go there. What is the definition of the land? Therefore, what use can it be put to? Thank you.
So because it's outside the centre boundary for Saundersfoot, in planning terms, it's considered countryside. So within the LDP, then there are a range of policies, and particularly policy 7 that applies to countryside, which identifies the types of uses that could be appropriate. And we've got Welsh Government policy. So there's, yeah, that's the sort of broad definition. In terms of what was on the site previously, it's a combination of scrub and woodland.
Councillor Murphy,
Yes, thanks for clarifying. So effectively, it's just unused agricultural countryside land there. Thank you.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, so in effect, it's just unused sort of rural countryside agricultural land, which has no real use at the moment. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think it was used for agricultural purposes prior to this.
Thank you for those questions. Any further questions to Sarah, please? I'm looking online first of all. I can see no one raising their hands. To my right, no, and to my left. So I think there are no questions. So this item was to note. There's no vote on it, to be clear. So Sarah, could we move on to the next item of EC 25/0051? Land opposite Windhill Manor.
Bear with me, Chair. Sorry, I think I've just managed to close the wrong PowerPoint. So, sorry, it's just taking a while to now open.
So whilst Sarah is doing that, just to remind members, this is asking members of the authority to give officers permission to pursue enforcement action. So there will be a vote needed in due course once we've given the presentation and the detail of the case.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for that. Taking a while to load. I think we've got lots of photographs within this. So this item is in relation to case reference EC 25/0051, and it is land opposite Windhill, Manor Tenby, and the postcode SA77SL. And the subject is non-compliance with an enforcement notice. So the enforcement notice in question was served in December 2025. And that followed a number of complaints received from May onwards to the authority regarding the creation of a new access point onto the A road, and that access point was created through a hedgerow, and that a wooded area of approximately 0.61 acres had been partially cleared of trees and other vegetation with hard standing applied to it. Officers visited the site, a planning contravention notice was served, and that's good practice. It's where you think a planning breach has happened, you try to identify key information from the landowners. It is a legal requirement to comply and fill out a planning contravention notice within 21 days. However, in this case, no planning contravention notice was returned to the authority. We therefore proceeded without that served enforcement notice, giving the landowners 4 months to comply with that. The 4-month compliance period expired in May 2026, and a site inspection in June demonstrated that the enforcement notice had not been complied with, and that there were additional breaches of planning control on the site. So if I can just show you where this is. You'll see this is the main A4 road, the main A road, and you've got the junction to Manabee here, so it's just before you approach that junction, and this is the strip of land in question. And I think these are very helpful images taken from Google Street View, which show the situation prior to planning breach. As you can see, eastbound on the A4139 and westbound. And then this is the situation post breach with the new access created. And you can see that there's been some substantial clearance, both of the hedge and the land behind it. If I go back, you'll see that there are ditches alongside the road. So one of the questions it really is what's going on with the drainage, as well as the fact that you've got this creation onto the A road. We have had conversations with highways colleagues and the highways manager from Pembrokeshire County Council. She is concerned about this access because the speed limit here is 60 miles per hour, and her view is that there is insufficient visibility in one direction in particular, and that because we have no known use for the site, we're unable to assess likely trip generation. So there are a range of concerns about the works that have been undertaken, partly highway safety, partly drainage, and also unjustified development in the countryside without a planning application to justify that use, with significant visual and landscape impacts on the national park and potential harm to biodiversity. And these are further photographs taken on site. And you can see we've started to see additional vehicles being moved onto the site. These are photographs from June this year. And July, you can see there's now a touring caravan on site, so that will be subject to a separate enforcement notice. And these are photographs taken this week, so this is the most recent situation. You can see the caravan is there, and then additional vehicles are also on site. There have been meetings held with the landowner and a range of discussions around it, but they have unfortunately still continued not to comply with the enforcement notice and to add additional vehicles to the site. And therefore, at this point, we consider that the landowner has had multiple opportunities to remedy the breach and comply with the requirements of the enforcement notice, that the continued failure to comply with the enforcement notice undermines the integrity of the planning system and public confidence in its proper operation. It has resulted in an unnecessary incursion into rural countryside, which causes significant visual intrusion to the detriment of the special qualities of the national park. We therefore consider it expedient and in the public interest to pursue prosecution proceedings should the breach remain unresolved, and I'm seeking delegated authority today to be able to instruct the authority's solicitors to commence proceedings to prosecute in the Magistrates' Court under Section 1792 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, as amended, for failure to comply with the steps required in the enforcement notice after the end of the period for compliance. So happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Enforcement is very important. It's significant in how we protect the national park. Do we have any questions? If I go online first of all, and then before return to the room. I can't see anything online. If I go to my left within the room, Madeleine.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for that report. The pictures are really helpful. The description in the report was impactful, but seeing the pictures is even more so, isn't it? This is clearly a major intrusion on the landscape of the park, and very disappointing that the landowner hasn't responded positively to the work that's been done by our enforcement officers, and indeed seems to have been making it worse by depositing more and more stuff, I suppose. It's a general description there. So thank you, officers, very much for your work, but very disappointing to see this impact on the national park at this site.
Thank you, Madeleine. Any more questions before? Oh, Di?
Yeah, thank you. Just for my own interest, really, it's probably not relevant, but does the landowner own just that smallish area, or is there further land beyond or around that they also own?
Our understanding is that it's limited to that area that I showed in red. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Di. Angie, you wanted a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not against the prosecution. I mean, seeing it in its entirety there in the photographs is quite shocking for me. I'm wondering that if we prosecute him, we're prosecuting him, and that doesn't necessarily fix the countryside and get the countryside back. Is there anything we can do about that? Because he seems to be, or whoever the person is, seems to be just not bothered about the rules.
I'll ask Charles to come in on that point.
Thanks, Councillor Tinley. There are a number of enforcement options available when an enforcement notice is breached, and some of them can actually be taken up before there's an enforcement notice. The most obvious one, as an alternative to prosecution here, would be to seek to obtain an injunction from the court, which could be either restrictive, not to bring anything else on, or even more positive than that, to remove things that have already been done. We've had a fair amount of success with those recently. I won't mention the sites, but they're ones that Sarah is aware of. That's one option. The other option is to carry out direct action, which is essentially where the authority exercises its powers, goes onto the land and removes things itself. And obviously there's a cost associated with that. You can then seek to recover that cost from the landowner, although that can be very, very difficult to achieve. So you're quite right, there are other things that could be done. One of the concerns with prosecution is that you get a prosecution, you get a fine. Sometimes the fine isn't perhaps as big as you might like, and then you've still got the problem.
Thank you, Charles. Sarah, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just to say, I think at this stage we're looking at prosecution. We haven't ruled out further action if that does prove necessary. So if it doesn't result in the restoration of the site, we would look at other options as well. As Charles said, we've had, I think we might do a session with members specifically on enforcement, actually, because there's a lot of information that isn't necessarily in the public realm, but we've had some good success with injunctions, and we've also increasingly been looking at direct action, and actually on 2 occasions now the threat of direct action with the phone call saying we are sending people in to do this work next week has actually led to the individuals in question doing that themselves prior to us doing the work, because they are aware that otherwise they will have a charge levied on the land that recoups that cost. So I think we might do a specific session with members so that we can talk about some of these cases more fully. That might be a good piece of work to do.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Angie, for that question. Vanessa, did you want to come in as well?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask one question. I think you mentioned that there was a differentiation between the items that were on the site as opposed to what you're asking us for today. Can you just, I'm not quite sure what the difference is and what we're asking to support now, if that's all right. Thank you.
Yes, the original breach was, and the enforcement notice that was served was in relation to the creation of the access and the clearance of the land itself. So that's what we're asking for permission to prosecute based on non-compliance with that enforcement notice today. Separate to that then, we have seen additional vehicles being brought onto the land, including the caravan, and we will be proceeding with a separate enforcement notice on those elements.
Di, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to propose the recommendation for delegated authority be authorised to instruct the authority solicitors. I mean, we have an LDP for a reason. We're here to protect the national parks as well as we can. We've got the tools here. I think the landowner has had sufficient time. I think you've been very generous actually in the time that you've given to sort this out, and they have refused to, and it sounds like they're refusing to talk to you still now, so or to do the right thing. So we're now starting to work on our LDP3. If we don't uphold our LDP2, then there's not much point in working with the LDP3. So I'm very happy to propose the recommendation as in on page, I don't know what it is, it's 77. Thank you.
Before I move on to that, Helen, you wanted to come in, and then Maureen. Helen, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just going to say I'll second Di's proposal as she's already raised it. Fully support the authority in taking this forward. I think it is important. Enforcements are important to sort of to stick by individual cases, but also to show across the board that that this is something to be taken seriously, and to give a message to anyone else who's considering to harm our environment and to not follow through on conditions. So I fully support.
Before we move to the vote, but thank you both for moving that and seconded it. Maureen, you wanted to come in?
Yes, may I echo Helen's comments? I wanted to second.
Okay, I'm looking around the room. I think there's no further questions of officers to my right, to my left, or on the screen. So what I propose is that we've seen very clearly how there's been a disregard for planning and disregard for the environment. And despite our best intentions and attempts to try and resolve this matter, we are facing a likely enforcement scenario. So the officers are asking us to delegate authority to them to seek that and go forward. So can I ask for all those in favour of delegated authority to officers to proceed? Again, I think that reinforces it's a unanimous decision to give you authority to move forward, Sarah, yourself and the colleagues. Can I thank everyone for their support in doing that? Enforcement is a very important tool, and without it, some people will just go ahead blindly and disregard the environment. Okay, the next item on the agenda, I think, is Kate. You're going to take us through for information and some appeals. So over to Kate in that way. Thank you.
Jill Caderiad. We've got 3 appeals attached to the agenda today. They were all dismissed. 2 out of 3 of them were retrospective, so they've come in through enforcement action where an application has either been invited or has been submitted willingly by the applicant before enforcement action was taken. This first one, Coidmore, not Gordon, Heron's Reef, sorry. This first one was actually done by the previous owner of the house just before it was sold to the new owners. So the new owners sought to rectify the unauthorised stone cladding and UPVC cladding by putting an application in, which was refused. We refused it on the basis of it being out of character with the surrounding area. You can see from the photograph there, it's quite hard to make out. The house dates probably from either the 60s or the 70s, when this sort of crazy paving cladding was very fashionable. And I think the previous owners probably assumed that because it was already clad, permission wasn't needed to change that cladding. But it was changed for a more modern contemporary form of cladding, which still requires permission in the national park, but was very out of character to what was around the site. So that was refused. The inspector dismissed it, agreed with the reasons that we refused it, particularly for the UPVC cladding not conforming to our policy on sustainable building materials. So that was a good decision. The next stage is that we have to either invite a further application from the applicant or pursue an enforcement notice to seek its removal within a certain time. So we're moving to that next stage shortly. The second application is for a new dwelling, Coed Moor. This was quite a difficult one because it's an infill plot, so the principle of a dwelling on this site was acceptable. You can see there's quite a modest bungalow to the side. This is the site, scrubland essentially at the moment, and you've got traditional, quite DNAS traditional houses across, and then just further up you've got a few listed buildings. And to the other side of the site, we had a relatively modern two-storey dwelling, so quite a mixed character around the area. So the proposed plans were for quite a significant scale of development. A two-storey house, significant amounts of glazing, a triple garage and a detached annex to the rear. It probably makes more sense on the block plan if you can see how densely developed the site was proposed. So again, we refused this on being out of character with the area. The planning inspector agreed that the overall design departed significantly from the character of the settlement. So that was also dismissed. The third appeal was, again, retrospective, partly retrospective. So it was for a first floor balcony on a single story bungalow in Saundersfoot in Scandinavia Heights. The roof and the sides, I think, hadn't been put on the site at the stage where we suggested that it wouldn't be supported by enforcement officers. But before we were able to serve an enforcement notice, the applicants put in an application to retain what they'd done and put screening on. So you can see that from the balcony, there are views into neighbouring gardens, which is why the application was not supported. Even with the screening, it made a fairly alien and incongruous feature in the housing estate. So again, that was dismissed by the planning inspector, and then the next stage to that is going to enforcement to agree what period that should be removed in. And obviously, when we issue an enforcement notice, that can be appealed by the applicant again, either on the basis they disagree with the notice or that they disagree with the period of time we've given for it to be removed. The final item on the appeals is a Welsh ministerial decision for a floating wind turbine farm, 10 floating wind turbines up to 300 metres high, located 35 kilometres off the coast of Angle. These are to have a lifespan, an expected operational lifespan of 30 years. The PEDU make a recommendation to the Welsh ministers. In this case, that recommendation was to refuse the application on the basis of the impacts on the seascape of the national park, the landscape of the Angle Peninsula, and ecological concerns. The Welsh ministers decided that the key issue was economic and renewable energy benefits, in that the wind farm would produce enough energy to power 100,000 houses. And on that basis, the ministers have allowed this to go ahead. So it's quite a lengthy decision at the very end of the pack. And if you have any questions, happy to try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Any questions of Kate and Sarah and the team? Angie.
Thank you. In the paper, it said that we lost some money. 250,000 on the wind farm. That fell through because the paperwork wasn't signed in time. Is there any way we can chase that up? That's my first question.
If I can answer that first, it's quite complicated. So I would say it wasn't in the main because the paperwork wasn't finished, but because the inspector saw no rationale for it, because you couldn't mitigate the impact of the turbines through landscaping. So because there wasn't any landscaping scheme which could mitigate it, they didn't see that there was a need for that Section 106 agreement. So you always have to prove that it fulfills a need when you're taking a payment in lieu of something, in the same way that for the affordable housing, it's going directly towards affordable housing. So if there's no need identified that can be resolved, then the inspector didn't think that it was worth further seeking those monies or through any further paperwork. So yeah, the minister agreed with the inspector's note on that in the inspector's decision.
Thank you. I'm a bit lost in something that you just said there. You said it's the minister said it's to contribute towards affordable housing. I don't know how that looks.
Yeah, I was trying to make a comparison between how we ask for affordable housing payments for new houses. In the same way, you could ask for a landscape mitigation scheme if you could show how it was going to mitigate in the landscape. But in this case, there's no way of showing how it could mitigate it.
Okay. There's more than one of these wind farms being planned along the coastline. Should we be saying something now about the way that's going to look and challenge the ministers for future? Because it seems to me if we're trying to protect everything that's coastal parks and someone could just come in and shotgun over that and just change a decision, it kind of makes a joke of us really in some parts. I understand that we need energy, but if we're making decisions, we're being trusted to make decisions, and then those decisions are just overturned. But unfortunately, in this one, we lost 250,000 as well.
Yes, so in this case, we were a consultee, so we raised concern, and we took that as a recommendation to National Park Authority, and members actually said we want to strengthen it, we want to change it from concern to object. Because of the act that it was determined under, the Electricity Act, where we as National Park objected, that automatically triggered a public inquiry. And so the developer came back to us and said, is there anything I can do to address these concerns? And they, as part of that, suggested limiting the height, because they talked about a range of heights. They said we'll limit it to the lower level. We'll also make sure that they are hooded to reduce the lighting, and within the area that is permitted, we will try and site them at the furthest point out. And then they also at that point offered the contribution to do internal hedgerow restoration across the Angle Peninsula. So recognising that you couldn't actually shield or change the impact from places like Freshwater West, but that perhaps within land there was opportunity to screen. So we brought that back to MPA, and members therefore agreed to amend it to concern. So we sort of went backwards and forwards slightly on it. But I think there is a point there for us to consider as an authority about, if we have these concerns again, perhaps we do maintain and object position so that we do trigger a public inquiry. And that's obviously, we don't want to spend public money in a wasteful manner and have huge cost, but that is something I think for members to think about depending on the level of concern. In terms of the areas that the Crown Estate has let, this is the closest area that remained for letting. So the next wind turbine proposal that we're likely to see is further offshore. So I think as officers, we don't think that will have as great a visual impact as this one that has just been granted. But I think, yes, there's a lot of food for thought in both the inspector's report and the Welsh Government minister's decisions. So if it's something that members would like, we could look at a workshop on it because I think there's lots of things for us to work through with this. And we did have a very helpful presentation from PCF previously on how all of the different offshore wind turbines kind of sit together and what that looks like for the coast. So that might be something that was helpful to revisit.
Thank you, Sarah. I've got a questions from Mike and then Helen online.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Ydy'r cyfieithydd beth yn gweithio?
Hello, the translator is working. Can you let him know? Hello, can you let him know the translation service is working?
Is in operation.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, thank you. Cwestiwn sydd gyda fi ar...
I have a question about the DM manager report, please. Do you want me to wait until you finish with the work that you have done at the moment?
Mike, can you repeat the question for my benefit? I was putting the headset on.
Yeah. Cwestiwn sydd gyda fi ar...
I have a question about the development manager report on appeals. Would you like me to wait until the work that you're discussing now finishes before I ask my question? Thank you.
Mike, you can go ahead with the question now. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you. I have two questions for Kate, maybe. The first one is with Penygraig Uchaf in Llandudno. Is there any information and a date on that or anything? And then the second question, Bryn Tirion Lodge. The same question really. Is there any further information and a date or anything on that? Thank you very much.
I think with Penygraig Uchaf, we've already received the decision, but it hasn't come through in time to attach it to this thing. So that was dismissed. Yeah, so that's we can send that on to you, but it will be in the next set of committee papers. And I think on the other one, we haven't had a decision yet. So there's no news to report on the second one.
Thank you both. Helen, you had a question?
Hi, diolch. Bring us back to the case about the wind farms off Angle. In this case, would there be a difference between mitigation and compensation? And I guess how that is framed at different points in the conversation with the developers. So taking on point, there's no way of mitigating that. I'm just looking in terms of lessons learned and what could be done in future, sort of looking at compensation for the landscape impacts being then paid or attributed to the statutory body responsible for maintaining the landscape and seascape of the Pembrokeshire coast. And I think we did discuss this during that sort of process. So I think sometimes I can understand that our aspirations and sort of our view on what we think would be just in this instance for landscape, wildlife and the people of Pembrokeshire might be quite different to sort of the legal and bureaucratic sort of nature of a planning process that is quite big, and also potentially it was devolved if the minister got involved in this one, but that's also the beauty of having very large energy projects to work through as well.
I think I've found the section of the report that sort of addresses this from the inspector, and it's paragraph 75, and he says the proposed development would have an adverse visual impact when seen from National Park coastline, and it is difficult to see how the impacts on those views could be mitigated without blocking views of the sea. To do so would, in my mind, have a greater adverse impact on the enjoyment of the views from the coast than the turbines. I cannot see how landscape enhancements elsewhere in the park could be said to be necessary to make the development acceptable or be directly related to the proposed wind turbines. So that was the basis that he determined that even though the Section 106 hadn't been signed, that he didn't feel it was necessary. He then went on, obviously, to recommend refusal in any case, but the minister, as Kate's identified, gave greater weight to the need for renewable energy and the economic benefits of the scheme in coming to a decision.
Charles, you wanted to come in?
It's also very important to go on to consider the words that he uses at the end of that paragraph, where he says, having concluded that the mitigation scheme would be neither necessary or what's the exact words? Necessary to make the development acceptable or be directly related to the proposed wind turbines. He then goes on to say, nonetheless, the proposed planning obligation would not be lawful if it does not comply with the regulations and should be given no weight in the determination of the deemed planning application. So he's saying two things: one, it's not possible, and two, if he did try and sort of bang us some cash, for want of a better word, it wouldn't be lawful to do that.
That clarity is very, very useful, Charles. I think it's a very important lesson as we go forward in other applications. But Madeline, you wanted to come forward as well?
Yes, I mean, it was something that we had quite a lot of anxiety over, wasn't it? It was whether we should go back and say, but what about the impacts? Basically, it was that open question. And the fact that the developer then came forward and said, well, we can give you a certain amount of money. And I think members were uncomfortable in that, how did this sit with us? Legally, obviously, it was a difficulty, but I think it is a real question that we need to continue to ask. On land, wind farms or energy projects, they have written into law that there should be an environmental fund to help local environment and particularly local people. And I think it was this part was our great concern. This was going to impact on local people and our visitors in quite, we don't know how badly, but quite severely, and obviously it was deemed significant by the inspector. And I think we do need to go back and ask that question. Okay, so does the developer now not have to do anything at all apart from produce quite a lot of energy, which will be good, renewable energy? But I think it is a question that again we whether we can push this back to the minister has now made a decision. I don't know whether we've responded at all or whether it's appropriate, but perhaps this is the time now to think whether we should just say, obviously we accept your decision, that that it's in the minister's gift, but we have concerns about the impact that this will make on the national park and its communities, the landscape particularly as well. Just because it's our job, we raised it. The inspector was even stronger than us because in fact we came back and said, okay, we still have concerns, but we're not objecting anymore. He actually objected. So it's a very clear reason for that. So that it doesn't quite sit happily with me that we just go, oh well, that's the decision.
Yeah, I think it would be worth us doing a specific workshop on this, and then perhaps identifying what questions we want to ask to Welsh ministers. I think there are also questions about, the Crown Estate identifying which areas for leases and how that process works, and whether there are further leases identified in the future, because we're aware, of what remains at present, and we can comment on applications as they emerge in that. But that decision about whether further blocks of C are identified and how that happens, I think we are concerned about the proximity of this to the Pembrokeshire Islands, and the RSPB raised very considerable concerns about bird populations. Since we submitted our response to this, I had a day on ScoMA with the Manxire Water Trust and was able to speak to researchers from Oxford University about Manxire waters. they do have some concerns about how this will relate to that population. So I think, you know, these are things that we're going to learn more about as these developments happen. But there are certainly lots of factors and lots of things for us to consider in terms of any future responses to matters like this.
Thank you, Sarah. Helen, did you want to come in on that point as well?
Yeah, if possible. Thank you. I think to me that thing about the sentence is not lawful. It may, like, in what aspect of the law, in that there's no current mechanism for this, because in terms of the principle of the law, to have an organisation set up solely to protect the landscape, protect biodiversity, protect places of tranquility for people's health, sort of, you know, near enough, you know, 75 years ago, to then say that when they make a stand for that wildlife, for that landscape, for that tranquility, for that to not be lawful, it's just quite confusing, because it sort of questions our existence and our purpose. So I think it's, yeah, like Madeline says, I think it's one to go back, I think, to ask for clarity and what exactly is not lawful about this, and writing the law, or the sort of overarching what we're trying to achieve with the law.
So yeah, I might pull Charles in a minute, but any Section 106 that we've been talking today about, you know, the Broad Dowell scheme, for example, had a Section 106 agreement with the outline, which required the affordable housing to be in perpetuity, and then also required education and library contributions from per dwelling, and made sure that the football pitch had to remain as recreational open space, so it couldn't be lost. And there are various legal tests that apply to Section 106 agreements, and that includes whether or not they're necessary. And I think that's why the planning inspector in this case concluded it was unlawful, because he didn't feel it was necessary, because he didn't feel it was physically possible to create a landscape enhancement. And I think that's where we need to do some thinking, because our thinking was you can strengthen the traditional hedge banks, for example, across the Angle Peninsula, so that, okay, you'll still see it from Fresh West, but you might not see it inland. His assessment of that was that if you're blocking the view of the coast from inland, that's detrimental. So I think those are the sort of issues that we need to spend some time unpicking and thinking about, you know, what landscape enhancement delivers best for the communities, and why is that necessary? And I think we perhaps didn't have those answers for this case.
Charles, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll come in just to sort of strengthen and support Sarah in relation to that. The rules that she's talking about there are contained in Regulation 122 of the Community Infrastructure Regulations 2010, and they set out those what were previously policy tests in legislative terms quite clearly. They're not new tests; they've been around for a long period before that, and guidance, but they give a legislative basis for that. I think you also need to appreciate, in relation to that sort of what I think you described as a contradiction between the purposes of the national park and this type of decision, is that ultimately decision making is balanced. It has to take into account a range of factors. Here they have the national park and the interest of that on the one hand, which is a weighty consideration, and they also have the need for energy and carbon reduction and things like that on the other, which is a weighty consideration. And their job as decision makers is to grapple with that and find the right balance. So I don't think it is contradictory to our national park purposes. I think it is simply a matter of finding the right balance. We might not agree with that balance, but it is what it is. Just to move the debate on, I think it is something that could be taken offline, perhaps to a workshop or something like that. But there may be some other ways that we could get into this, perhaps via community benefit funds. Community ownership, particularly in energy, is a big political topic at the moment. And something that, you know, with the new government coming in, we may see further guidance in relation to that. So it may be that the landscape is changing slightly, no pun intended, and that we find some other ways into it, but we could take that offline, I think.
Thank you, Charles. I guess it gets to me is that learning is at the heart of this authority, and so when things are slightly different to what we think should be, we can put that into our learning, because that means we make better decisions in future. So I think that's really helpful to go offline and take that. But I wanted to return perhaps to Kate's appeals, because what it says to me is that public and communities can have confidence in our decision making, because there's been a rigor in our officers and how they've come to present those decisions for our approval, and expertise which has been very clear, and the fact that those appeals have been dismissed should give others confidence in that what is being done is the right thing, and that right thing is it's good to see in that way. So just to give a thanks to our officers and members for giving clear decisions and expert decisions in the applications, and that's why they've been dismissed. So with your permission, I'm going to move perhaps to close the meeting, if that's okay. Beg your pardon, Mike, you wanted to come in?
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd, thank you. Gair yn gyflym i
Thank you,
cytuno
Chair.
gyda
Just a
popeth
quick
Helen
word
wedi
to
dweud.
agree with everything that Helen has
cyfrifoldeb
said.
gyda ni.
We do have a
Rhaid ni
responsibility.
meddwl ydyw 'na
We need
trwy'r
to think
amser.
about that all of the time.
Hefyd dwi'n
Also,
gyda ffordd
I do agree
mlaen
with
ma'
the
Sarah
way
wedi
forward
gweud,
that Sarah has
bod ni'n
proposed,
dysgu,
that we
fel ma'r saith yn
learn
dweud, you're never too
how
old to learn.
the
Ma' raid ni
English
dysgu gyda
English people
phethe,
say you're never too old to
sy'n
learn,
actio
and we need to
rownd y
learn
parc
everything that happens
genedlaethol.
around
So
the national
dwi'n
park. So
edrych mlaen
I
am
am
y
looking
gweithdy
forward
bydd yn dod
for
mlaen
the
trwy
workshop
hwn.
that will be
Diolch yn
coming
fawr
through
i
this.
pawb.
Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you, Mike. So I'm going to propose that we close the meeting, or move towards closing the meeting. Today we've had quite a range of issues, from planning applications to enforcement. Those issues have been teased out. We've saw clarity where it's been needed, and I think we can be confident we've come to very good, clear decisions in both cases. We've completed the business of the day, and decisions will be made, or have been made, and matters can be taken forward. I'd also like to pass on our best wishes to Simon. He was taken ill this morning, and hence why you've suffered with me being chair today. But also I want to leave a sort of thought which Kate whispered in my ear at the break, was that every day is a learning day, and that forward, onward and upward together. And that's the important thing. It's about the motto of the Bahamas. Kate? Yeah, every day is a learning day for us. Diolch yn fawr, and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Diolch Cadeirydd.
Diolch.
Diolch swyddogion.